Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's SIS educational webinar series, Dynamics SL Project Allocator, Hourly Employee, Percent Markup, and Reimbursable Billing. Thanks for joining today. Before we get started, I'd like to talk a little bit about SIS. We're founded in 1996, headquartered in Duluth, Georgia, just outside of Atlanta. SIS delivers business solutions that help project and service-driven companies unify business processes and applications across the enterprise, thus delivering better visibility and efficiency. The services that SIS offers are current state assessments, business process analysis, requirements and fit gap analysis, software design, development and deployment, custom application development, ERP and CRM implementation, rapid deployments for hub and spoke rollouts, and on-premise or cloud deployments. I want to let everybody know that the 2020 Community Summit SL User Conference is still on schedule and planned to be held in Nashville October 6th through 9th. We would love for you to come out there and see us. The SL User Group Summit is a great place to get together with the SL community, see how others use the SL platform, how you can get education, you can get training, and if you would like to save $150 on your registration, you can use the SIS discount code SUMMIT SL150. Keep a lookout for the next few weeks. We're going to be sending out a webinar invite where we're going to be having a webinar taking a look at what this SL user group is going to be like this year and showing the value for you to come and attend. A little bit of general information before we get started. If you have any issues during the webinar, email info@sisn.com. We're going to have a Q&A session at the end. But if you think of any questions before then, feel free to go ahead and put those in the question box. For best viewing, please view in full screen mode. We're going to be recording this webinar and sending out not only the webinar, but the slide deck in the next 48 hours after the webinar is over. Now I'd like to get to our presenters. Brian Keel is going to be getting us started today. He's our Senior Dynamics SL Consultant, along with Russ Hudson. Brian, take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. What we'll be looking at, with the allocator, and it's certainly one of the most powerful modules within the Dynamics platform, is that with Allocator, it's one of those behind the scenes modules. It doesn't have the prettiness, I'll call it, of accounts payable or creating a project, but it does a lot of the behind the scenes transactions for items that are of a billable nature, or if you just want to, mark up or move items around the dynamic system. So one of the first things is, it can apply rates to existing project transactions, and it can also create or generate new project transactions, which can update just the projects, or it can create general ledger entries. The rates involved, they could be based upon units such as hours, or in materials you might have a unit such as tonnage, and you can apply it based upon a standard rate, or you can apply a percentage off of the total transactional amount. For example, you're going to take a cost of $1,000 and you're going to mark it up 20%. You don't have to use a bill rate like you would for labor. The computational and processing capabilities of Allocator is just huge. You can make, as I said, GL entries for revenue, project entries for revenue. You can impact WIP and cost of sales. So with the Allocator module, you're looking at different components to build your Allocator. You'll have rates, and it can use these rates in an allocation method, and you can have multiple allocation methods within your environment. You don't have to have just one rate or just one allocation method, because each of these are assigned to individual projects. So when you're setting up a project, you assign a rate table and you assign an allocation method. So it takes these rates and it can apply, an overhead percentage. It can mark up costs. It can create billing records. So there's a lot of flexibility that you have within the Allocator module. At the same time, it can also, as I've indicated earlier, it writes new transactions into the general ledger module. There's been a lot of different ways that Allocator is set up. It's not a one size fits all. Every company, every client has their own unique processing and procedures that you need for Allocator. So, the Allocator setup that's good for one company doesn't work for another company. Next, please. So with it, and Russ is going to go through this, is, we'll form or create rate keys, and, such as an employee, a project, a task. And from here, we'll define the rate types. And these refer to the keys used for looking up these rates. Rate types could be a costing perspective. We've had clients that they don't want to have their employees' actual labor rates showing up in the financials, so they make a blended rate, for costing purposes, and then they'll have a different rate for billing purposes. You'll have rates for, as Russ will point out, for labor. You might have them for materials, subcontractors, travel expenses, however you want it set up. And then you have your rate table. And with your rate table, it goes through a hierarchical process to calculate the billing rates. As a very brief or summary example of this is, you could have two levels. One is an employee and another is a project and employee. So if it comes to one level, doesn't find it, it goes down to the next level until it finds the correct combination there. And the rates are applied at what are called the leveled rates, or you could have just a default rate. And once you've created your allocation method, then the system just, you can process it manually, or you can have the system automatically calculate the allocation so that when you release a transaction, it will automatically calculate the allocation steps, processes, and rates, and automatically apply them without any intervention on your part. So for here, I'm going to turn it over to Russ so that he can show you, the steps involved of running, running your allocation module.
Okay, I'm assuming everybody can see my screen. So we're just going to today go through some very basic allocation examples: labor, material markup, and reimbursable travel. So the first thing we're going to look at is labor. And to do that, first thing we need is a employee. So I'm going to go ahead and create an employee. And I'm going to give him a costing rate of $75 an hour. He's going to be in the consulting labor class, and this is going to be hourly, $75 an hour. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a project, for example, so that we can record time and materials to it. And I'm going to call this Dallas Inn and Suites lobby update. In order to bill on this project, we need a customer. So I've created a customer called Dallas Inn and Suites. And to be able to code labor to it, we need a GL labor account. And we need some tasks. I'm going to create 2 tasks. First one is going to be design. And I'm going to do installation. So this project is, this hotel wants to do an update to their lobby, new fixtures, furniture, and equipment. So that's what this project is going to track. And it's doing some additional things that are new. Next thing I'm going to do is enter a time card for some design time for this project from the employee I created. And we're going to call this design of lobby. And I'm going to put in $8 a day for 3 days. Then we'll go release this time card. And that's done in time review and approval. And if we look at the project after we did that, you see that we costed 24 hours at $75 an hour for $1,800, and that went to the account labor. So now we want to do the setup for billing of that labor, 24 hours. For the allocator to be able to feed transactions automatically into flexible billings, they need what I would call a holding account. And so the allocator reads transactions, but then it has to temporarily store them somewhere until they can be available to be fed into the billings module. So I'm going to create some what I would call holding accounts in project control, and these accounts are non-accounting, so they won't affect the project P&L, they won't affect the general ledger. They're just a place to put transactions from the allocator so that they can be made available to flow into flexible billings. So the one I'm going to create is going to be called bill labor. And the account type is going to be non-accounting. The next step would be to define a allocation key for this labor. And I'm going to use one that's already out there, but I just want to review it with you. So the key, I'm going to assign rates by project in this example. So I'm going to use the key called project. And down here, this field at the bottom of this key shows what this key is going to read. And what it's going to read is from the PJ Tran or transaction table, it's going to read the charge project. So that's where it's going to find the transactions to be able to allocate. The next thing I'm going to create is my rate table definition. So this defines which keys I'm going to use in my rate table. So I'm going to create a new rate table here, and I'm going to call it bill. And the rate type I'm going to use for this rate table is labor, L. And the key I'm going to use is project. Now, as Brian was saying, you can have different levels of granularity here. If you want to assign rates by, for instance, project and task, you can put that as a level 2 level of rates. And the way the allocator works is, if you run an allocator for a particular project and it doesn't find a rate on level 1, then it'll look for it in level 2. So if on a particular project you don't want to do rates by project, but you want to do rates by project and task, then you would assign rates to level 2 and not put any rates for that project in level 1. Likewise, if you want to go further, you can do a 3rd level of rates in this example: project, task, and employee. So in level 3, if the allocator doesn't find any rates for that project and then doesn't find any rates for that project and task, but then does find a rate for that project, task, and employee, it will use that rate. So you can, as you can see, you can get very detailed here in terms of your hierarchy of rates. But for this example, we're just going to keep it simple and assign rates by project. So after we've defined the rate table, we're now ready to go enter some rates. That's done in allocation multi-level rate entry. So I'm going to pull up the rate table I just created, and the rate type would be L. And I'm going to enter a billing rate for my project, Dallas Inn and Suites, of $125 an hour. So now that I've entered some rates on the table, in a rate table, I want to create an allocation method to use this rate table. So that's done in allocation method setup. And I'm going to create a method again called bill. And on the first line, I'm going to create a allocation called calc and post labor. Calc type would be calc and post. Now the beginning and end accounts, here's where we're defining what accounts that the allocator is going to read. And they're going to, for this first line, they're going to read labor is the begin account and also the end account. So it's just going to read that one account. The rate type it's going to use is labor. And the allocation basis is going to be units. So it's going to pull the hours. When this allocation runs, it's going to pull that 24 hours that we posted from that time card. The post project is going to be lowercase s's, which means same as the source project. Post task is going to be lowercase s's, which means same as a source task. Post account category is going to be this holding account. So this is where the allocator is going to post the result, which would be 24 hours times 125 an hour. And it's going to post it to the account called bill labor, which is that holding account we created.
One thing I wanted to add, and I apologize for interjecting, is, when Russ was putting in, post project and post task with wildcards, in addition to the source, you can also use other wildcards such as lowercase p to come from the project, T for the task, E for the employee. And you can also combine wildcards within it. So you could have segment one coming from the employee, and another one from the the task or something like that. So you can combine wildcards within your post and post transactions.
So in other words, you can make it as complicated as you wish. There's some check boxes at the end of this. Again, there's some other functionality in this screen, but we're keeping this example simple. So we want to have the allocator post in full detail and also post the hours. So not only will they post the amount, but we want the 24 units or hours to come across too. So now that we've created a rate table and an allocation method, it's time to go back to the project and update the project with those new values. So the allocation method is bill, and the rate table for this project is also bill. So again, you can have multiple allocation methods, multiple rate tables out there for different classes of projects, different types of projects, so on, depending on what you want the allocator to do for a certain group of projects. The next step would be now to run the allocator to take those 24 hours, multiply them by 125 an hour, and post it. So that's done in allocation processor. And as you can see here, the allocator took the 24 hours, multiplied it by 125 an hour right here, and gave the result of $3,000. So that's the billable amount. So we're going to go ahead and run this as a final. I just did a preliminary. So now if we go and look at the project transactions, we see now that we have $3,000 posted to the holding account that I created earlier, bill labor. So the allocator read the 24 hours from labor, multiplied by 125 bucks, and posted it to the holding account. So now we want to pull that amount into flexible billings for an invoice. To do that, we need to create a billing rule with these new accounts. So I'm going to call this billing rule bill. And you'll see there's two grids here. The top grid defines which accounts transactions will be pulled into flexible billings. And the bottom grid defines how those transactions will be posted when they're released to the, when the invoice is posted to the general ledger. So in the top grid, we're going to put bill labor because we want that $3,000 to now come into flexible billings. And we're going to define how that's going to be posted when the invoice is released to the general ledger. So we enter bill labor as a source account category in the bottom. And then we enter the GL account where it's going to be posted. And that's billed revenue. And billed revenue on the GL chart of accounts is linked to the account category revenue. So when that invoice is posted and processed, it will post $3,000 to the GL account 3030 and to the project revenue account. Again, wildcards here for the sub account, same as source. The next thing to do is to update the invoice format record for the new account category of bill labor. So I'm using the invoice format 99, and I want it to show in section 100 with the one that's defined as labor already. So I'm going to hit insert 100 account category. I want to show in the invoice is bill labor. The description on the invoice, I want it to say labor. Section description, I want it to say direct labor. So now we've updated the invoice format definition for our new bill labor account. The next thing we need to do is define the project billing information. So I'm going to pull up my project. Invoice format is 99, and the billing rule is my new billing rule called bill. Now that I've defined the billing information parameters, the bill labor transactions should now be available to be pulled into flexible billings. And the way that's done manually is this screen called billing transaction load. There's a checkbox to make it all automatic, but I'm doing it manually so you can see the process here. And you see it pulled in one transaction. Should be that $3,000. So now if we go create an invoice in invoice and adjustment maintenance, there it is, pulled in automatically. If we look at the invoice, There's our $3,000 pulled in automatically. So the next thing we want to go over is a materials markup, materials and travel. Normally, materials and travel would be entered through accounts payable, but there's some new functionality with this version that I haven't seen before, and earlier I had trouble getting an AP batch to release, so I'm just going to enter these transactions as a project charge entry to get the expenses on the project. So the first thing I'm going to enter is some materials. And that would go to the task installation. Count category would be materials. And I'm going to do $5,000, and the description is lobby carpet. And I'm also going to enter some travel on this batch. So the travel would be for my employee, Joe Barnes, and his travel was for the design task, and the account category would be travel. And I'm going to put in $1,200 for Joe Barnes Air Hotel Car. So now if we look at the transactions, we now have some travel and the carpet posted to the accounts travel and materials. So now we want to pull these items into flexible billings via the allocator. So the first step would be to, again, create some holding accounts for the allocator to post the transactions to. So I'm going to create bill, materials, and it's a non-accounting. And I'm going to create bill, travel. And it's non-accounting. So I've created my two holding accounts. The next step would be to update and add additional lines to the allocation method so that the allocator can pull those transactions from materials and travel into these holding accounts. So we're going to go to allocation method setup. I'll pull up bill. So I'm going to add another line here, and I'm going to call it calc and post materials. It's going to read the material range for transactions. And I'm not going to use a rate table for this because it's just a flat markup of 10% for materials for this particular project and allocation method. So since we're not going to use a rate table, the rate type is left blank. The allocation rate would be 1.1. So what it's going to do is going to read an amount and multiply it by 1.1 or 10% markup. And the basis is going to be amount, not units, but amount. And again, the post project would be same as source. Post task would be same as source. And the post account category is going to be that holding account, bill materials. Then I'm going to add a third line. I'm going to call it calc and post travel. And it's going to read the travel account. And reimbursables are usually done without a markup at a flat 100%. So again, there won't be a rate type. The allocation rate will be 1. So there'll be no markup. It'll just pull the exact amount that was posted to travel over to the holding account. Source, project, and task is the same. And so it's going to pull 100% of the costs into bill travel. So if we go run the allocation processor now, you can see it took the carpet of $5,000 and multiplied by 1.1, 10% markup, and the result is $5,500. Took the travel of $1,200, multiplied it by 1, and the result is $1,200. So it didn't mark that up because we are not going to mark up travel. It's a straight reimbursable. So we'll do a final on this. Now if we look at the transactions, now we have the carpet marked up 10%, $5,500, posted to bill materials. And we have the travel of $1,200 posted to bill travels. So the next step would be to pull this into flexible billings. So the first thing we need to do is update our billing rules for these new accounts. So in the top grid, we're going to add bill materials and bill travel, and also in the bottom grid. Then the next step would be to run billing transactions load to pull those new transactions into the invoice. And we have 2 transactions that came across. So now if we go look at the invoice, there they are, our carpet and the travel. So let's look at the invoice. There's our labor, there's our carpet, and there's our travel. Okay, Eric, that's it. I'm done.
All right. What questions does everybody have for us?
Or did we put everybody to sleep?
I don't see any questions that have come in so far. We'll give it another minute or so to see if anybody wants to type any questions into the question box.
That actually went quicker than I thought it was going to.
All right, well, it doesn't look like any questions are coming in, but if you do think of any questions, you can always email us and we'll be happy to take a look at those and get those answered for you. We want to thank everybody for taking the time to attend today. If you have any questions, if you'd like to see any more information, or if you'd like to see how the project allocator can be customized for your specific needs and requirements, please contact Debbie Peavy at dpeavy@sisn.com or give us a call. I want to thank everybody again, and thanks Brian and Russ for taking the time to demonstrate the project allocator.
Wait, do I see somebody with, is that a hand up? Catherine Friend? Oh, it just went away. Yeah, thank you, everybody.
All right, thanks everybody. Have a great afternoon.